It's been some season for Florida State football, but we also have some new news, possibly, concerning what Florida State football will look like in the future, and that could totally override what's going on in the here and now. So we will get to all of it here in the next few minutes here at the Voice of College Football, FSU Live. George is here from the Renegade Report. So that's your stop every day, is the Renegade Report for new content on Florida State. We appreciate you being here every Wednesday, 6 Eastern. George, what's going on tonight?
Man, tonight, not too much, man. My lighting's a little off, as we were talking about. We're a little late. I can't find my LED light anywhere. So I guess getting on Amazon to buy another one of those. But we just did a show last night. Basically, the way it's worked out, we've got Friday, and then the instant reaction with you Saturday. Then we got a show Sunday. Jen's got her show Monday, the roast, and then we do a show on Tuesday. I come on here with you Wednesday. So Thursday is about the only day we're not doing anything. She's just staying busy. Not quite the conversations we were hoping to have, as we look halfway through September, but it is what it is. We're just soldiering along with it.
You heard all that, folks. The Renegade Report. Just keep it there. Subscribe. Hopefully we're getting to 3,000 here soon, right?
Soon. We're closing in on 28. So.
All right. Let's get George to 3,000, and then we'll bust through that and keep going. So again, the Renegade Report. All right. Well, it hit my news feed this morning that Clemson, Florida State, the ACC, preliminary talks, nothing official, nothing set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but we've always known that the ACC obviously wants to keep those two. So it's more about Florida State looking for a new home or a revenue share that makes sense for them based on their value. The last reported revenue that I saw was $44.8 million per school. That was for the previous athletic school year, 22-23, as reported by ESPN and some others. And so Florida State apparently still in talks with the ACC about possibly staying in the league. Now, the one caveat to that was the revenue share, obviously, that we've already discussed for months and months, that was already on the table, that even if those two were leaving the league for the remaining 1 or 2 years or 3 years, whatever they would be there, that they would receive, or whoever turns out to be those schools, but it would be Florida State at the top, and then Clemson, and then cascade from there, Miami, Florida, or North Carolina, and others would receive an inadequate or higher based on success on the field, success in postseason play, going to postseason play, number one. Number two, based on television ratings, both in football and basketball. But I got to think it would be weighted heavily in the direction of football. But men's and women's basketball, TV ratings, there would be some formula put together to say, hey, you have earned this based on your valuation because of the success you bring to conference, and therefore we would no longer have equal revenue distribution. The other portion of that has come into play, at least you can correct me if I'm wrong, that is a new slice of this, would be the grant of rights being reconfigured to earlier than 2036, expiring before 2036. And then obviously there would be all sorts of decisions to be made by all these schools and the ACC. What do you think about all this?
Oh, yeah, man. Look, we've been talking about this ad nauseum. It's something we've really covered in extreme detail on our channel. We've talked about it here every time something comes up. It's being reported as, oh, look, FSU and Clemson, they realize they're not going to be able to get out. There's no home for them. So now they're trying to figure out how they can stay. Everything you just lined out, the thing that was in this story, this idea of a unequal revenue distribution that is off of TV numbers. That's the main one. Like, they were all fine with, oh, we'll offer this if you get the ACC championship, and they have stuff in there currently with bonuses on, like, how you do on the field. That's part of the narrative. Oh, FSU was crappy, from 2017 2021, and they're talking all this stuff. They're not even good enough to leave, yada yada. So yeah, this is always on the table. It's kind of a settlement talk. This is the one option for FSU to stay. It's what we've told people over and over again. If FSU is going to stay, they and Clemson as well is a very similar situation. They are going to have to be able to compete at an elite level, compete with Big Ten schools and SEC schools for national championships. That was a stipulation that was in the grant of rights, in the ESPN contract, in all of that. Another big part of it, you mentioned it, the length of it through 2036. ESPN isn't going to, it's way too far down the line. It's way too far down the line for FSU and Clemson and ESPN. So, there's no way FSU and Clemson would agree to, okay, whatever you come up with in equal revenue distribution, okay, well, that gets us competitive for 3 or 4 years. And then we're in the same problem, the same boat we just started out with. By 2030, all of a sudden the SEC and the Big Ten are going to renew their deal, and we're in the same exact boat. So that was the important part you said there yesterday. That's also a part of it that people are kind of glossing over. This is Florida State and Clemson saying, if you want to keep us, here's what has to happen. We have to get paid based on the money we bring in for the conference. You can say all you want about success on the field, yada, yada. It is the TV money. It is the eyeballs. That's what moves the needle. And it's another thing, I'll make this point again, that I've said over and over. People like to say, oh, well, they're only 40% of the conference. If Florida State and leave, they're not everything. The ACC would be fine. They could recover, yada, yada. It's not 40%, guys. It's closer to 60, 70, 80%. Because when you got teams that average 300,000 views, yada, yada, Cal, Stanford, these people that they added, and you add the bottom teams of the league, when they play FSU, that one game is more for their average per week for the whole deal. Yeah, it's kind of up in the air. There's people arguing whether the ACC brought this back, oh, let's do this, or if FSU, Clemson, it was all them. They're the ones that, wanted to do it. But I think it's just one of those things. The date we've constantly told you guys about is February 1st, 2025. In order for this thing to keep going with ESPN and the ACC, that is the date to continue this grant of rights through 2036. So there's no chance in heck that the lawsuit that they're currently enthralled in will be settled by then. There's no way that you could get a judgment. And we've said this all along. The only way we're coming out of this thing is through a settlement of some sort. And this is just one of the options for a settlement as we get closer and closer to that penultimate date. It's the last chance. It's the only chance for FSU and Clemson to stay in the conference. And yeah, if it works, that'd be great. People are trying to make it out like, oh, they're folding because they don't have this and that. Yeah, since FSU and Clemson have no point in their case, since they were totally wrong and they've just been butts, the AC is going to give them everything they've been asking for the past 2 years. Nobody wants you, but we're going to give you a bunch of more money and please stay. Just back up for a second. That's exactly what this is. Just what Florida State and Clemson asked for in 2022, and we're told it's a non-starter. No way in hell. Wake Forest, all these small teams, all the presidents, no way, we'll never do it. And then that's when Mike Alford, he got loud in 2023 after they just completely been shut out for years and pretty much told just go away in 2022. No way, Wake Forest deserves just as much as you. 2023, he got super loud, and that's where we got into you make a little bit more if you make the playoffs and play on the field matters and things of that nature. But those incentives are never going to get you anywhere. It's got to be a legitimate, and people don't want to hear it. It's got to be Florida State and Clemson making $80 million a year, and the rest of these teams who don't do crap, don't invest. Whatever you want to say about Boston College, these teams, yeah, they can kick our ass on the field, but they're still not putting as much money into it. They're not drawing the eyeballs, things of that nature. There's going to have to be a giant disparity. Look what we've seen with the Big 12. A lot of delusional people over there over the summer, pretending what things were going to be without Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12, and it's better than the ACC and all this stuff. How has that turned out? One team a week breaks 1 million, 2 million viewers. It's 1 million, 1,500,000. The whole conference. If Utah loses, come on. So sorry for that little bit of a rant, but that's my initial thoughts on it, and then I'll be more succinct and answer your questions better going forward.
No, that's why we have you here, George. So no reason to apologize. All right. Okay. So my first thought is that if you look at Major League Baseball, if you look at other similar situations where it's almost like the way the governments run to a certain extent in regards to, I'm not talking about the current government, I'm talking about the establishment of the country in terms of the Senate seats versus the House of Representatives, where you have this theory as a league to say, okay, everybody's an equal member. Therefore, we're going to have like half of a philosophy. So we're going to take our entire, all of our assets, all of our revenue, everything that we own, and we're going to have a mixture of two parts. One philosophy is that everybody's an equal member, regardless of what you bring to the table. You're in the league. You should have one vote versus their one vote. You should have the same amount of money, blah, blah, blah. Then you got this other theory that, well, certain schools, programs, et cetera, bring more, obviously, eyeballs to the TV screens, that makes us more money. And that's easy to see. We all know what that deal is. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine those two philosophies, and we're going to split all the revenue in the conference. Let's say the conference makes, for every $100 million, we take 50 million and we split it evenly. And then we take the other 50 million and we figure out, that becomes more complicated. Mm-hmm. Who's worth what based on, sure, so to me, the reward for making postseason play, for being the best in the conference, making postseason play, whether that's as a CFP representative, as the conference champion, or an at-large that may make it as a second place team, or NCAA tournament teams, etc. Those teams are obviously, regardless of how many teams watch them, Pitt won the ACC a couple years ago. Regardless, they would be in the ACC championship game and then move on to the playoff. So that's worth something because they're taking part in the playoff. But the bigger portion of that is the value based on your popularity, who watches you and all that. Now that's a pretty complicated deal to work through, because to go through TV ratings is one thing. To say, okay, Florida State averages 3.5 million viewers per game and Wake Forest averages 800,000, whatever the numbers are, and say that's 4 times as many, and go through like that. But as was mentioned in this article, which I was thinking the same thing, the strength of the TV ratings is kind of a cycle. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy is what it is that it's partially been proven that the big networks at the best time slots get the best ratings. So
we've had this conversation.
So for example, there's a reason Ohio State and Marshall are playing at noon on Fox on Saturday.
Why do they put FSU in all those spots then?
Well, I understand that. That's what I'm about to explain.
I know.
Fox is putting Ohio State on because they draw a crowd. It doesn't matter who they're playing. So Marshall and Ohio State should be playing like in the Big Ten Network if you're talking about the quality of the game. But they're going to play at Fox, noon Eastern time. So, but let's also understand, if Ohio State and Marshall, what we're playing in the Big Ten Network, they wouldn't be having as large a crowd as they did and would playing on Fox. The same thing for Florida State. If
put it this way, if Marshall played Alcorn State on whatever you're talking about, Fox, the primetime spot, and Ohio State played Michigan on FSU1, it would do 100 times the ratings, and FSU1 would have 5-10 million viewers.
But
now there's a certain amount, like FSU would obviously do less views on FSU1 than Fox, but FSU versus Ohio State would still do 10 times the views that, Indiana, Michigan, or whatever random lesser matchup did. Like, that's in there, and that's nuance. But that's that's exactly what I was pointing out, because Cal gets their chance on ABC. Or even though we suck, Florida State's still 0-3. So you can talk about it being a cycle. FSU's 0-3 in the dead, but it's just people love to rage it. They're happy we suck. So we still get the primetime slot with Cal. Probably the only time they'll get it all year. they'll get 5 million views, whatever, like we get every single week. And then, whatever, they're 500,000, that's what I'm getting at. What you're saying is absolutely right, but that's why it has to be separate. Like all that performance stuff, that's fine. I think that should be built in. But when you're consistently, like I get it's tough, but you can consistently look at the numbers and see that 30% year in, year out for 20 years. You can see it. And if you just take out Clemson and Florida State, you can see the difference in the numbers. A lot of time when you're making analytical decisions, if you're trying to make a decision in life, you can't look at the extremes. You got to take out that. So let's look at the TV data with what people average and take the top game out of it every year. And they're the top 2 games and the bottom 2 and look at the middle of it. And if you do that, it's just there's nobody in the conference that even enters the conversation with Clemson and Florida State. Miami is somebody that has been there and is within striking distance. They could get there again, but it's such a direct, like if you look at the top 8 for like whatever 10, 15 years, it was literally the Atlantic Coast. It was the Atlantic Division because all those teams played FSU and Clemson every year. Now that you don't have divisions, when you look at this year's best ratings, it's all the 8 teams that were on FSU and Clemson's schedule. Like it almost has nothing to do with what school you are, just who plays FSU and Clemson. I get that it matters, that they're on the primetime slot and stuff. But even again, we can go back to FSU versus UAM or whatever it was the one time we were on the CW. It still did 3 or 4 million views. So that's like, there's no way in heck Duke, Boston College, or whoever was on that would have done, they probably would have done a couple 100,000. The problem is the ACC, like if you want to keep these guys who want to compete at that top level, if you want to be in that business, this is something that you're going to have to do. And it's all good points, but then let them leave. Let them leave. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I can get why people wouldn't want to do it or whatever, but you're just going to have to either let them leave or you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to pay them different. I know it's tough to figure out exactly how much. And like after 5 years, I don't think that popularity and who does on TV changes enough in a period of time, like what they're suggesting between now and 2030, that Wake Forest is going to be like, look, we're carrying the ratings for the ACC now.
No.
Why aren't we, anyways.
I'm not saying that the point that I was making is anywhere close to the popularity of the schools determining how many people are watching. I'm just saying that's a nuance. It's a
for sure
tweak, but I'm not in any way saying that it's anywhere close to being the factor of just sheer how many people want to watch Florida State play football. I'm just saying that, again, it's a cycle in that these time slots get the best ratings because they select the teams that are going to give them the best ratings, but that also helps supply. Again, some people just watch, they flip on ESPN all day on Saturday and just watch the games, or they just flip on Fox at noon and whatever showing is showing and so forth. So there is a slight pop there. They could bring in a lot of smart math people and analytics that would dive into what your next point was about the Atlantic Division and Syracuse wanting to say, look at our TV ratings. well, okay, hang on just a second now. And then there are computations that they go through that can kind of extract that. I can't think that outlier status. I can't think of the math term deviation of how much that's impacted by Florida State and Clemson to figure out, okay, what are the true draw that each fan base, if Florida State and Syracuse play and 5 million people watch the game, we'll never know how many are watching Florida State and how many are watching Syracuse and how many are watching just because they bumped into that game or they just feel like watching that game. But you can get pretty
FSU,
close.
Syracuse, and then like Syracuse Cal or Syracuse whoever.
Yeah.
But still not a true measurement. There's still nuance and things in it. I get it.
I would make an estimate. It would be pretty close, I think, to what the smart people would figure out, that it's probably 4 point something million are watching Florida State and 6 or 800,000 are watching Syracuse, and then there's a handful of people, 10% of the audience, it just feels like watching that game.
Yeah, it's just a different thing. It's a different, it's crazy the hate that gets sent FSU's way is that they're unhappy, they're this and disloyal and bad partners and stuff. Like they're literally the only two power schools left. They all left the Big 12. They all left the Pac-12. We're all that's left. It's somehow, even though FSU has been far and away the most loyal, quote unquote, blue blood you ever want to call it, they're all in the Big Ten and SEC. FSU and Clemson are the only ones away. They literally went undefeated in their conference and got left out. It's like, what do you expect them to do? You either got to give us the money to put us over the top so we have all the shine and, can have top 3 recruiting classes again, just be able to throw them out, whatever the case may be, or you got to let them go. It's just, it's where we're at. It's aggravating, the narrative around it. And if you want to know about how FSU moves the needle, just go look at these podcasts and things all summer. It's like still FSU's 0-3, and it's all everybody wants to talk about. And being a podcaster and doing this, I'm constantly looking at what other people are doing, and I look at all these different things that are all college football, just in general, or conference realignment, or a Big 12 podcast, or SEC, and it's like they're all talking about Florida State, and all their most popular videos are all Florida State videos, and they're talking crap about how our fans are this and how we're delusional and stuff. But it's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, you're just all the time talking about Florida State. So whatever, just keep hating.
Well, it's kind of a fascinating story that team goes undefeated last year, gets snubbed from the playoffs, has the drama with Jordan Travis. Not that he did, but obviously with the injury, not anything he did wrong. And then this whole battle with the ACC ensues, and Clemson jumps on board. So people are fascinated with realignment. And Florida State is the biggest brand that looks to be leaving, jumping. So that's a conversation piece right there.
I mean, Texas and Oklahoma are pretty big. It was nothing.
Yeah, but they've already decided. They've already left.
Well, I'm just saying,
for years.
But when it was going on, it was nothing like this. To where every single podcast, that's all they talked about. To be fair, there was also the Pac-12 thing going on at the same time. Like, I get it, but you talk about us, you're making all your entire living, everything is talking about Florida State. You're like growing your platform off of it, and at the same time, you're trying to say that Utah is better.
Well,
whatever.
Well,
How come the Utah videos don't get any views?
The reason, I'm guessing, that there wasn't as much talk about Oklahoma and Texas is because once the story broke. It was over. They were leaving the Big 12 and going to the SEC. There was nothing to speculate about.
Oh, that went on for a decade. Florida State almost went there in 2012. That dominated the cycle for 3 years.
It really wasn't a hot topic. It wasn't like the Pac-12 falling apart and there's all this speculation going on for months and months and months and years.
That's fair. I get it.
Where we found out about Texas, Oklahoma, and they were gone. It was done.
Well, I mean, Clemson. Okay, compare it to Clemson. How come nobody's talking about Clemson nonstop?
I don't listen to that stuff, so I don't know who's talking about who myself.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, Clemson and Florida State are pretty comparable, and they both want the same thing.
I'm not hearing either one, so I've got way too much to do.
Well, you cover like how many? You got 30 teams now?
Yeah, so I'm not hearing what other people are talking about, but
FSU football in the title, it moves the needle on YouTube. That's how it is.
So, yeah, I would love to know how they're proposing to split this money. I would love to see that. So,
I think we hit all the main points. Exactly, or what they said. I mean, TV, performance, all that stuff goes into it. But yeah, exactly how they figure out the TV. Do they look at 10 years? Do they look at 5 years?
Sure.
Yeah, that's. I don't know, but what I do know is it's going to need to be significant. It's not going to be some,
Sure.
oh, well, if you go on a good run, now you make more money, or yada yada. Let's end it. I mean, if they want to tally it up at the end of the year, that's fine. I mean, FSU is always going to come out on top. It's just, it turns me into being a hole or whatever. But it's like you don't have to constantly argue with people that the Yankees are a brand or the Cowboys are the brand, but people just whatever they want to talk about Florida State like that, whatever. Like, we'll just keep watching the numbers roll in.
But do you think it is reasonable to think? Yeah, there's no question about that within the ACC that it's not a debatable brand comparison down the list. But so the numbers that I saw today, I don't know what the Big 12's paying right now, but I know that the ACC, regardless of where the ACC is right now, the one thing that it is doing is it's escalating. At least they didn't just sign like a $300 million contract for 10 years, and so everybody gets $30 million a year every year. It's escalated and it's going up. The Big 12's, it's just a revenue share. And so at some point in the last couple of years, the ACC went past the Big 12, and it's at like $45 million now per school. And I think the Big 12 is like in the $37 or $38 million range. So is there a possibility that Florida State determined at least that they may not be as sure that they could go to the SEC or the Big 10, don't want to go to the Big 12 for a lot of reasons, money and otherwise, would rather stay in a more stable ACC because that's kind of where they belong. Not that they can't go anywhere else. College sports are changing, so there's all sorts of schools playing in conferences we would have never thought, but that was a better option than possibly landing in the Big 12.
Here's the issue. You hit the nail on the head about that. I don't know the exact details because Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma and stuff, they adjusted. They've got their thing set, but I believe you are correct. It's a little bit less. And yeah, Florida State, the ACC, pay scale, it was designed to be inflation proof, to rise along with everybody else's, but we all know that's not how the thing goes. Like, whatever. Jones bought the Cowboys for $250,000, and then now it's worth $5 billion. Just a couple years ago, it was $2 billion. Took it 30 years to get to $1 billion, and now 10 years later, it's worth $5 billion. So that's how that's how things work. So obviously, it got a long ways off. The SEC and the Big Ten, even though when this was first formulated, I think we may have passed the SEC or gotten pretty close to them at that particular time. The problem is with that, is it puts Florida State in hell, for lack of a better term. It's nowhere near good enough. But if you take out FSU and Clemson, it's way, way too much to pay for the rest of the conference. So therein lies the crux of the argument. That's the problem. That's why February 1st to 2025, that's why FSU just didn't, whatever, we're just going to leave and pay it off the bat. Like, that's why they're trying to figure it out if that's the option. Because, I'm sure FSU would rather not, possibly owe $500 million and have to spend all that time doing it. So, if they could stay home, they get everything they need right there at home, they'd stay in the ACC. Just again, going back to 2022 when they originally proposed what they're talking about right now, and then 23 when they begged and pleaded again. It's not like, again, FSU, they're loyal. Like, it's not like they wanted to leave. It's just, it is what it is. They want to compete at the highest level. And the ACC last year proving it's impossible to do that within that league at this point in time. Like, okay, even if we figure out how to go, and we're undefeated, making it, with all this less money, we still don't get in. So now you have the 12-team playoff. That changes things a little bit. If I can get the same exact money as the SEC and the Big Ten and everything I need in that, all the support, of a top program, and play an ACC schedule versus the Big Ten or SEC, then yeah, for sure, I could definitely see that. But people want to make out that it's FSU that wasn't flexible, and it's all this. It's crazy. Like, one of the ACC things they've been doing over and over and over again is like, look at this article FSU posted saying, they agreed to the grant of rights or whatever. It's like, you can't use that, man. You whatever. But yeah, I could definitely see it. They just gotta I don't like it. As a fan, I don't want it because I don't care about the 12-team playoff. I want to get in. I want to have just as good a chance on the games I play to get in as the top programs. But yeah, ultimately, it's definitely a possibility. But it would still be a huge win to get paid based on the TV value or however they want to break it down, because this is what it is. You can't compete at a top level unless at this current right now, unless you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, you just can't compete. I mean, look at the Big 12, man. They were talking big in the summer. We'll see what happens. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens when the playoff happens and we see all the Power Five champions in there, all how many SEC Big Ten teams get in there, and then what happens when you have the playoff. Because there's a certain level of when you're one of these Big Ten or one of these Big 12 or even ACC teams, and I count FSU and Clemson in this, there's a difference in being able to run your schedule undefeated against a little bit lesser competition, whatever the case may be for a lot of us. Get ready for after a month for a playoff game and then maybe win one more, or get ready for a month, for the one national championship game to get into a 12-team playoff, and you've got a Georgia or whatever, whoever the case may be, on a bye. You got to win a game and then beat them. Like, playing Georgia is like, or whoever for some of these teams in that situation, it's just going to be a battle of attrition. So the national champion is going to be the team that has, like, it's almost, you're going to have to be a top 5 recruiting team to win the national championship. So you add the parity and everybody gets there. It's going to be fun to see all the matchups. But yeah, it's going to be curious to see because it seems to me it's going to be even harder to ever have a Cinderella story or anything like that of that nature because of the meat grinder it is. Your only hope would be to have like 2 Cinderellas on both ends that somehow meet in the semifinal or something like that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I would not like it, but if they make it work, they make it work. If they can upgrade everything and get the right amount of money and everything like that, then that would be just fine. But yeah, I definitely prefer to go to one of the bigger leagues and compete because the part of that I just mentioned about the meat grinder of in-conference play, that gets less and less the more teams you add to the conference. Because, when it's just, again, when it was Atlantic and Coastal, FSU, Clemson, it was a meat grinder every year. Now that they've gone away from the divisions, all of a sudden the schedules are a lot easier. And it's the same thing in the SEC and the Big Ten. You've got Florida, who's absolutely screwed. Like, their schedule is terrible. But, to a certain extent, it moves things around and you're not having to play quite as crazy ones. You have a lot more of what's the word I'm looking for? You have more variation. You don't have one team plays a crappy schedule every single year and one team has a cupcake walk when you take out the divisions. That used to be infuriating where, you play Miami every year and they're like 7-0 and you're like, damn, they're world beaters. Well, dang, we beat them. How'd they lose to this? They play an Atlantic team once and lose. How's that possible? But anyways.
Yeah, the divisions turned out to be an issue in college football. Yeah, they did. They certainly did. Falconer TRX, please hire Coach Prime at FSU.
Well, hire him as recruiting coordinator, something like that. Not head coach. I couldn't stand it. I would have to seriously, he drives me up a wall. Did you see him attacking the reporter for asking him if they do wet ball drills because there's a chance of rain?
No,
let me get
this
rant off, Mark. Let me get this rant off. Okay. I aspire to be in the media. I want to be credentialed for Florida State football. I want to be able there to ask the tough questions to Mike Norvell, these different coaches. I'm sure all those guys up in Colorado, it's a dream come true for Prime to come to town, all this stuff. But, he's all this stuff. He's taking out your access. He's going to call you out on the mic. Nope, your CBS not taking. He's going to dress you down if you ask anything that's critical. So, what the hell can you ask a college football coach? The guy says, hey, I looked and saw there's such and such chance of rain. Are you guys going to do any wet ball drills this week? Deion spends 5 minutes tearing him down. What do you mean? What, is there a chance of rain? Is there what? I didn't think there was no rain. Pulls out his phone. Mine says 20%. Somebody in the crowd says, mine says 40%. I mean, that's stupid. Why would I prepare for something that might not happen in the game? Mark, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would I prepare for something that might not happen in the game? Have you ever heard of football? Isn't that the antithesis of what a football coach is?
Yeah.
Isn't that what Nick Saban, all this is about details? You're supposed to prepare for anything and everything that could possibly happen in the game. But yeah, he dresses this guy down. And then I see another thing on Twitter where he's criticizing and calling everybody out for talking crap about players and act like they can talk about them now that they have NIL and be critical and all this stuff. Y'all think y'all can type and and these are kids with families and you're the same guy that threw your entire offensive line under the bus after every game, blaming them, and then you sent them all packing. The entire group brought in a whole new group. You'll be, there's all these stories about the crappy things he does to players, and it's like, dude, get serious. Like, I don't know if it's just all an act or what. I loved him as a player, was a big fan. It's like throwing rocks from a glass house. That's like his thing. He's there with like a AK-47 full of rocks, and he's got a little cutout in his glass house, and he's just spraying. Like, it's nuts. But I don't know. Maybe that's
disagree with you. I don't generally disagree with you because I just think that he does not handle that position well and just says things that are just not the smartest things to say. And he's way too thin-skinned to be taking those questions. Just take the questions. They're mostly, you're going to run across some stupid questions. That's fine. Everybody does. Every coach just kind of looks at the reporter and just kind of makes up an answer and goes with it. But yeah, he attacks these reporters. He's so thin-skinned. It's unbelievable.
Like, what? And it's like, I'm this guy, whatever, I get fired up. I've never been a fighter in my life. Like, I want people to like me for the most part. But like, when you get really in like close relationships, obviously you're like argue. But most acquaintances, if I'm in a store, I go to let's be friends. Let's find common ground. It's hard to piss me off. You could call me names, this or that, whatever. I'd rather walk away. Like, whatever. You don't like me, I'll leave. My one pet peeve, all the fights, the main fights, fist fights, physical altercations I've been in my life is people like looking down on you, want to make you feel small, make you feel lesser than, for whatever reason. It's usually somebody that was bullied, but for somebody like him, who's just been the golden child since he was, a kid, whatever, tough upbringing. He wasn't a rich kid or anything, but prime time, FSU, the NFL, this amazing family and homes in Texas and getting to coach your son and now at the college level and doing all these great things. For him to be that thin-skinned and to get off on making people feel small and like just dressing them down in a room full of people and all this, like, it's just petty to me. It's like the worst version of humanity outside of like, whatever, the 10 Commandments, depravity of that nature. But in whatever, in civil discourse or professionalism, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't get any worse than Deion Sanders to me. That's just me being honest.
Well said. I'll take all of that. I've tried to be fair with him. I don't jump on everything he says. I try to listen to it with some type of understanding or perspective that maybe he's not being as harsh or as rude or as thin-skinned as it appears to be. But I usually come to the result that, for another example, just here in the last few weeks, he's talking to his team. He's pointing out that you don't hit Shadur Sanders, you don't hit Travis Hunter, you don't hit Shiloh. These are our stars. We run this like an NFL team. Yeah, that's not the quarterback. Fine. I think everybody understands why you don't hit the quarterback in practice. That hardly ever happens. We get it. But to be... And we all understand that the football coaches at all these schools understand who their stars are and know how to treat them and how to, I don't want to say make it easier for them, because those are usually the guys that are the hardest workers. But if there are injuries to protect and those sorts of things, yes, good head coaches know how to deal with their teams to make it to where, yes, they are rewarding the best players on one hand, but they keep it they're looking for team unity. They're looking for these guys to treat each other like brothers and not be looking down on anyone. And he just seems to want to cause some kind of tension with everything. Like you said, he arrives on campus. The first thing the guy's telling everyone is most of the team in the room is going to have to be packing their bags, get your suitcase. You're going to be gone. Not
it is what it is,
not
man.
we're going to go to spring practice and you're going to have to bust your tail and show us that you belong here.
You might not all make it. It's not for everyone, whatever the case may be. And I'd have been fine with all that. Like, but it's the fact that it's for production. Like, I get it. He's playing the social media game. He's doing all this stuff, and it's got to be what it is. And look, I retweet some of his stuff, and if he's preaching and if he's saying something I agree with, I'll retweet that and I'll give him his props there. But it's just like, to what you're speaking to, that's one of my biggest problems. Is like it's a different set of rules for those three, and it's so clear. And it's just like, at least pretend, like, whatever, at least try to like maintain appearances. But also in that media room, he is that guy. In that media room, he's Deion Sanders. He's the one that's sitting up on high at the podium. Everybody's gathered around, waiting bated breath. It's their couple minutes. This might be this guy's one chance to ask a question this week, and he's got to write an article around it and hit a deadline for whoever he's working for, whatever the case may be. And I guess it was a gift. I guess I could look at it that way. The guy that asked the question, this is probably a viral moment. And far be it from me, maybe when it was all over, he walked up to him and shook his hand and said, "Look, I just handed you $10,000. You can turn this into yada yada." And if that happened, good for him. And I would laugh, and I'd talk to Deion if he told me and he was standing that right there. And he doesn't owe me that apology. But if you're going to play Chael Sonnen, or you're going to play, whoever wrestling heel in your press conference, then I'm taking you at your word, because you're a football coach, and that's what that seat's for. We saw guys like Mike Leach, explaining what would happen if there was a cage match with all 12 of the Pac-12 mascots and stuff like that. And that's funny, and that's all fun and games. And we've seen him tear down his team. And you bunch of sons of bees are no good. And my grandma could do better than that. But I don't know. I just don't sit right with me. I'm sure he's a great family man, and it's nothing deeper than that. But yeah, the professionalism, it drives me nuts. I would not like to be a part of that room. I would end up getting in trouble. I would speak my mind. I can tell you that much.
And some of it's kind of difficult to put a finger on, but it's just the whole persona that you guys all exist as a team for me, and to pump up my career. And I'm the name, I'm the brand, and Colorado's just kind of where I'm at right now, versus coaches, whether they truly believe it down deep. I think most of them do. I'm sure some of them are just not that caring of their players, but I think most of them are, that they build a relationship with these players through the recruiting process. They care about them. They want the best. Sure, it's a cutthroat business to the extent that it's competition for positions, but besides that, they just seem to be more invested, number one, in recruiting. For one thing, I saw a comparison between Matt Rule and Deion Sanders, because they were hired the same week, and the number of recruiting visits, well, Deion Sanders has done 0. Everybody's come to him, for one thing. So he's never gone on a recruiting trip.
If you can do it, more power to you. But it's just, we'll see what happens. I'm convinced he'll be gone after this year, and there'll be a lot of "I told you so" going on. But if he's, and I've said this also, if he's there, if he's coaching Colorado to open up the year next year, or for that matter, any other college football program, if he gets a better job, if he's head coaching college football this time next year, I will say an open apology, and I was wrong. And we'll see who the next 3 favorites you pick are, and if it's just like a thing. But it sure seems to me like it's about your sons and the guy that's your like adoptive son, because none of this would ever happen without Travis Hunter. None of it. Colorado wouldn't have won the 4 games they won last year. Who knows what they do at Jackson State? I mean, he is the difference maker. Shador's good. Like, don't get me wrong. He's so comfortable out there. He's gotten to a point where he can slice and dice on a college level, but there's still a lot of immaturity. And like, just the example of those games, how they had him running around at the very end of the 4th quarter when the game was out of reach. It's like, holy crap. Like, all it would take is one misstep, and there goes your ACL, and you're done for the year. Like, what's the point of this? Like, you're putting yourself in harm's way. But that's a different decision. I can't figure out what Mike Norvell's thinking, so I'm not even going to worry about what Deion's thinking about coaching their team. Some of the stuff Like, you really love that kid and you're playing him 150 snaps. Like, it's cool and all, and he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But you can't tell me it's in his best interest to play more than 50, 60 snaps. Like, he could redshirt for 2 years and be a top 10 NFL pick. Like, you're getting your liver split it and all these things because you're playing all these crazy snaps. I don't understand how that could possibly be good for Travis Hunter. Like, I don't. I know this is an FSU show, guys. It's really kind of depressing to talk about FSU football. So we can talk for 15 minutes about Cal and about the youth amendment and all that stuff too if you want.
I only got about 3 minutes, so we'll just take a quick look at Cal here because they showed up at Auburn a couple of weeks ago as a 2-touchdown underdog and pulled off a win. They're 3-0. The other two teams were obviously Sisters of the Poor. San Diego State sometimes good, but not this year. So I'm not going to oversell Cal, but they did beat a decent Auburn team. And I know Auburn's not great, but they're talented. And they pulled it off at a difficult place to play. So they're showing up here in a game that we didn't give a whole lot of attention to start the season. But I think
it's a lot different now.
Florida State's what? Only a 2 or 3 point favorite?
I haven't even looked.
Okay.
I think it's 2.5. I think you're right. The fact that we're any kind of favorite, Vegas is just like, they got to get it together at some point. Like, we haven't shown anything on tape that says we could beat Cal. Now, what I will say, I will go positive with this. The defense, loved what I saw. I'll name the starting defense I want to see. I want to see KJ Sampson and Conrad Hussey at safety. I want to see. I'm fine with 8 and 23. They can stay at corner. Hopefully they get fired up and playing a little bit better. Kevin Knowles in the slots played pretty well. He's been one of the bright spots, but I want to see Edwin Joseph worked in there. He needs to get at least 20, 30 snaps in coverage a game. At linebacker, Nicholson and Cryer, both sophomores, maybe one a redshirt freshman, I'm not sure, but both second-year players. The defensive line, I want to see Lolo Hayes start, and I want to see 95 Daniel Lyons next to him, next to Josh Farmer, next to Patrick Payton with 7 coming off the bench. I want an or between their name. I'm not sure if Lolo Hayes, what the reason is they haven't given him the start, if he's banged up, if it's because of NIL, whatever the case may be. But I had hope. This defense, that unit I just called out, they can fire off the ball and they can put forward something that is really like, okay, this we can live with. This is something we can win games with and move forward with that. The offensive side of the ball, again, that's where all the question marks remain. It's all about DJU, Brock drama. I've been saying it all along. DJU's going to start. I don't know if we see Brock in this game. I think everybody as fans kind of drew the line at week 2. And then last week was like, that's it. We want to see Brock. It doesn't make any sense. But I think Mike Norvell, as the coach, is a week behind everybody else. I think this is his penultimate week. I think he wanted to see DJU at least get a shot with his offensive coordinator there on the field with the offensive line coach, helping things there with protection and things of that nature. But I'm here to tell you, if it looks the same after the first half, if he doesn't put Brock Glenn in at halftime, or at very least talk about starting him and giving him an opportunity this week, you start doing irreparable damage to your tenure as a college football coach. They're not going to fire him this year, probably not even next year. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but folks are going to start making plans for 26 or 27. They're going to, and if you don't pull out some magical year, you're going to end up being a lame duck like Billy Napier. So I don't want to see long-term damage. I don't know if, people are talking about, is it the NIL money? Is he just too loyal to upperclassmen and things of that nature? I don't know what exactly it is, but we need to see the youngins, free them youngins, whatever the case may be, what they call it. Malik Benson's been playing better at wide receiver. Keep getting him in the ball. Kentron Portier, another older guy, keep getting him the ball, and let's see the young guys. Let's see William McCoy. Let's see Landon Thomas. Let's see Elijah Moore. Get him the ball. Micah Hydanzi is a guy that we've been hearing about from day one when he got here, but he's been doing good at his job and making explosive plays in practice. Well, the past couple of weeks, apparently he's been the hottest thing on the field, according to a lot of people. So why isn't he getting the ball? We got to get him the ball. It started the first of the year not seeing Juice Cryer get a single snap on defense. How did you not know your best linebacker he's your best linebacker and he didn't get a snap? So there's something going on between evaluations, between these position coaches, or whether it's seniority, trust, thinking they do the right thing, and they're just not firing. But these young cats are firing off the ball and putting effort at a completely different level. And now this past game against Memphis, it really stands out on tape when you see the young guys. So that's what we need on offensive line. There's really not many young guys there. You hope to see an Armella get a chance to get in there. You hope that Early can play better. You hope you can get one of your starting tackles back because Robert Scott's hurt and he's out there having to play. There's a lot of different things. But quarterback, that's the main thing. Quarterback. Running the football is huge, but I think in this offense, and what you've got at offensive line, part of that is you just got to be able to make them pay. You have to prove that you can complete the open passes, and if they go all out blitz, you can beat them. Because if not, that's the biggest problem with DJU. His feet are stuck in the ground, and teams know that they can just fill the box, and whether they're running it or they're passing it, we're good because he's not going to get it off in under 3 seconds, and if he runs it, he's not going to check out of it and run it, run a sweep or send it the other way. He's just going to, he's going to run right into the teeth of the defense. So something has to change. I don't know what it is, but here's to praying. I'll make it a prediction Friday, but I don't have a prediction. I don't know a ton about Cal, just that I know they play disciplined football. Despite the talent disparity, they played much, much more disciplined football than FSU at this point in the year.
Absolutely. Changes need to be made. 12 points against Memphis. Can't have that. All right. Cal's coming to town. And again, they looked pretty formidable against Auburn. Only won by a touchdown, but man, they were a 2-touchdown underdog and they had control of that game. All right. Falconer TRX, appreciate you being here. Miami mediocre for 20 years. Gets more eyeballs. I don't know what that means.
Then who? I don't know who he's talking about.
Yeah, they do. Then Syracuse and Boston College, etc. Okay. All right, George, Renegade Report. We want to make sure everyone knows where to find you and what you're up to.
At the Renegade Report, man, we've got the Renegade Roast, which is Monday, which is comedy, self-deprecation. We were hoping to roast other teams. We did all that leading up to the season, but the losing streak, it's all about roasting ourselves. Jen and Tiny Hat host that. And then Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays at 7 Eastern, we do the Renegade Rundown, which is more like, something like this show, more of just talking about ball and what's going on with FSU football, the lawsuits and everything like that. So yeah, come check us out. And also Saturday, of course, the post-game instant reaction right here at the FSU Voice of College Football. So yeah, just staying busy.
We are off to the Miami show, everyone. We'll see you in 30 seconds. Thanks, George.
All right, man. I was ornery today, huh?
Appreciate it.